Okay. One Piece chapter 1135, blind reaction. So I did like, first and foremost, how this chapter just opened up and you have Bonnie, which again, it goes back to the whole thing with kids. Like, you got Bonnie looking at the books and she's there with Chopper and they're like, oh my God, the letters are so huge. I can't even read them like this. And we find out that Bilbo, that owl that oversees everything, ate the growth fruit, and that's why all the books in the library are as huge as they are. But what I like about that is it just kind of goes back to just showing children and like that children's innocence and like the joys of reading, etc. I like what Oda did here. This was very good. And so the other thing on this is that we just continue to see more of that innocence and that love for knowledge, and the way that Nico Robin, I ain't seen Nico Robin cheese this constantly, this consistently in such a short time span, in a minute. Like, she looks truly at home here. And this is why I did like and love that decision to just continue to follow up with the Straw Hats here. That was good. That was very good. Like, if anything happens to Saul, I'm going to be pissed off, because I just have this sense of foreboding that something's coming. Like, it's One Piece, so I know something's coming, but I just have a greater sense of dread that these happy moments with the way that Oda's laying it on thick, like if you've been here for a long time, you've heard me say heavy hand, soft hand, where Oda hits you with the soft hand and then he turns around and hits you with the heavy hand and drops a bombshell on you. I kind of feel like we're headed towards something like that. And the reason why is, like, there are small signs, like how they talk about how they don't get newspapers here because they aren't affiliated with the world government. And the only way they get their news is through the newspapers that the fishmen get while they're at sea before they kind of travel through here. And so it means that there's some knowledge that is missing. And I feel like there's some bad actors coming. Like, we already see it, because like Shanks and I'm gonna get that in a second. Shanks, or what looks like Shanks, and that person that is there, like, they're clearly up to no good. But what I like too is that, to kind of shift back to not get ahead of myself, is that when Saul is asking, does it take you back? Like, he don't even have to say, does it take you back to being a child again? Like, it's just kind of implied and stated to us. And what I like is that when Chopper is like, I want to see the medical books, and Robin's like, it's mostly history books and archaeology, but there are probably some books here. They're going to be huge. They can't be shrank down. I like that, because just as I think that we're probably going to see Sanji pick up some cooking stuff that'll be helpful, I think that Chopper is going to learn something that's in some of those books, because there's no way in hell that like Chopper is going to be in that library and not pick up something useful, just given how much research that the people of O'Hara did. And so for them to have anything medical related, there's got to be something in there that modern medicine never thought about, because the whole point of their library is they had information that was top of the top, very well researched, including some of the forbidden stuff. So I am curious to see what Chopper would see. Now, we shift over and you see Luffy, and he's just being an absolute demon. He's terrorizing the kids. And for a moment, I feel bad for the kids. And you see Nami sticking up for them. She just knocked the hell out of Luffy and Usopp. And it's because the kids were, quote, terrified. Nami's shouting at them. And so you got one of the kids, he just runs right into Gerd's chest and he's crying. And Sanji's like, man, you know what, Luffy? These kids are being raised to be well-meaning and kind, to be pure. And that's when one of them just turns his face and looks over at Sanji, and he's just got that perverted grin. And like, this takes me back to Momonosuke, and I'm like, my mother, I can't believe this right here. Like, I laughed, but in that moment, I was channeling Sanji there. Where I'm like, man, dog. That is so brutal right there. But what I like too is that when Luffy is kind of recovering from the damage done by Nami, Suddenly, somebody says, I found you, Straw Hat Luffy, and it ends up being Gerd's kid. Not Gerd's kid, but Ripley's kid. And Luffy just goes straight into Gear 3. And he doesn't land the attack, but like when the kid is able to recover, he's like, man, I can tell you're really a one of the four emperors. And it just makes you look at it, it just shows you how naturally strong these giants are. Because Luffy hit with a pretty high powered attack. And like that child got out the way, but anybody else that would see like Gear 3, they would be shook up. This kid's like, whatever. I have high hopes. Because even Luffy says, at least there's somebody here with a backbone. This kind of makes me worry that whatever's coming, those kids are going to have to pick up arms at some point. Because you can't necessarily just have people that are 100% pacifists and they never mix it up. Not in a world like this. Like, One Piece world has not fully evolved there. Like, even what you had with Egghead, like with all that research and etc., and how Egghead low-key was kind of looking like a utopia. When the world government came in and had the Buster Call, like, violence came there. And I feel like violence is getting ready to come to Elbaph. So it's something to keep your eyes on. But I did like how when Ripley's like, you're causing trouble again, when she's getting on to her son. And then she's like, but that was a really good swing. It just builds on what we had in the last chapter, where we do learn that Ripley is a former warrior. And even though her child is not at the school, her child is still inheriting some of those warrior genes. But we're seeing it from the perspective of a child. And that's where we get the interesting thing, where we find out that her son is a half giant. And the reason why I found that interesting is when I was looking, maybe it's just me, but he did look like he was smaller than some of the other kids, which I would explain it. And when Sanji hears, oh, you're a half human, he's thinking the same thing I am. Like, oh, wow. So a human got inside of her and had a kid. But taking the dirty jokes, perversion stuff out of there, because like, how do you even hit the G-spot on a giant woman? But that's like something completely different. But what I like is that Oda kind of just dives into some of the differences. And he's like, yeah, your husband's a human. Ripley's like, he's a younger man actually. And so, okay, so she like him young. Okay. But then because her husband is aging, she's been a common law wife. And it's because he doesn't necessarily want to marry. And it's like, that's like a real feminine thing to do. Like, I get it, like I get it. But at the same time, it's like, if you love somebody and you're with them, why does that matter? A lot of people go their entire lives without ever finding what the ancient Greeks called their twin flame, their soulmate. And so if you do have that person, that's your person, be with them. Work out the rest. Work it out later. And so after the Straw Hats are talking about the feast, and after Gerd makes the outfits for the remaining Straw Hats, and they're all in their giant gear, and it's all human size, and like Gerd's like, that's all, I just like making human clothes. It's okay, Gerd probably got like a human sneaky link somewhere, because it's like, why would you be making human clothes? Not unless like that's like a hobby. I didn't get that vibe from her. Maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into it just because of how close in proximity it is to Ripley revealing that she's got some human dick out there somewhere. But I kind of think Gerd probably got a human sneaky link. Like, we find out that like Gerd was probably getting a back blown out by Roger or something back in the day, I'm not gonna be shocked. Like, I'm really, or Rayleigh, one of them, right? Like, I'm not gonna be too shocked at all. Now, after Robin's like, I'm gonna stay here, I'm gonna catch up with Saul, Vegapunk is saying that she's gonna do her thing, and then you got how Frankie's talking about how like the trees on this island are made from the same substance that the Thousand Sunny was made up out of. It's okay, so the Thousand Sunny is probably going to get an upgrade as well, which kind of makes sense. We're getting close to the end, so that does make sense too. But inside of the castle, we see that woman that is traveling with that person. It looks like Shanks, and they're asking for Loki. And the reason why I don't think that this is Shanks is, number one, they're wearing hoods, obviously. But The woman looks like she used some type of hockey. But I guess no, like the guy don't have the foam coming out, the mouth, so it's not the Supreme King hockey. So whatever she did made this guy fall over. And the reason why I do like it is it just really makes you sit there and pause for a second and go, why do they feel the need to hide themselves? Why are they going after Harold? Not Harold, but why are they going after Loki? That's the thing I need to know. I don't think it would be Shanks, but now I want to know why this person looks like Shanks. Because I don't believe it's Shanks. And like even kind of going back and looking at the appearance, like he looks a lot like Shanks, but maybe it's me, but like the design looks slightly off. But if it is Shanks, like let's just say it is Shanks, why the cloak and dagger stuff? And like Loki and Shanks have bad blood. You know, Shanks don't strike me as the type to come back and try to settle a grudge. Like if anything needed to be done to Loki, he just would have done it. Like that's how I kind of look at that. You know, I might be wrong. I've gotten some shit wrong before. So that's the interesting thing. Now, I do like how when we shift back over and we see the Straw Hats and they're all celebrating, Nami's got her ears closed because of how loud everything's getting, and it kind of makes sense. You know, Giants probably louder than Saturday night main event was for Cena's last match last night. Like it's one of those things like, ooh, eardrums probably bursting. But I did like how, again, things are continuing to come full circle. And this is one of the joys of One Piece being such a long series, is that you get moments like this. So essentially, Hadruden's brother or old friend was almost auctioned off. And because Luffy showed up at Sailboat when he did, he was saved from going into slavery. And as we saw, what happens when the celestial dragons get their hands on people, that's a very brutal life. And so now you're just seeing the connections, and there's all this praise that's going on for Luffy and the Straw Hats, and we get Beard Hill, and he's beginning to make a speech, but for whatever reason, he's got a sword that goes through his helmet, but it looks like it is going through part of his skull too. Not sure how that works, but we're probably going to find out, because the chapter ends with him saying, the helmet saved my life. So now we're going to find out how that happened, more likely than not. But somebody's saying that it's going all the way through. So it's more of the wacky stuff. I like this. Like this chapter encompasses a lot of what I enjoy about One Piece. I can kind of understand if like when this chapter came out, people might have said this is mid and etc. But I have the benefit, number one, I'm binge reading. I'm just reading a few chapters at a time. Basically like reading a volume at a time. Like basically, when I can afford to get thumbnails made, I'll buy a set of thumbnails and then I'll read however many chapters I do, and then I'll kind of pause and I'll come back. So it's one of those things like, because I'm not waiting week by week, I feel like I appreciate it a little more. But like this was filled with so many small moments and just connective tissue. I like this. Like I'm very curious to see how Oda just stitches together more of the lore and more of the seeds being planted for what's coming. Because that Luffy and Loki conversation now feels like a Chekhov's gun. Like if you go to Anthony Chekhov, the writer, he has a line where he says, like this is a long, long time ago, he says that if there's a gun on the nightstand and that gun on the nightstand has to be fired off at least once. Otherwise, it serves no purpose. That's why they call it a Chekhov's gun. When you introduce something, it eventually has to serve a purpose. There are false guns where you mislead people, but that Luffy and Loki situation, Luffy's going to end up running into those two people. It might be a Shanks clone. You know, it might be a Shanks clone. If there's Vegapunk clones, this might be a Shanks clone. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.